Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our second in the series of 3 in 30, hosted by Beaton and hosted by myself, Jon Huxley. I'm a partner at Beaton and I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. And welcome to all of those fellow Aucklanders who are in lockdown at the moment. And all of us, of course, on the call will be enjoying, or not, as the case may be, varying degrees of COVID consciousness. But one of the silver linings, maybe, of COVID is we've all got much further to grips with what we're about to do for the next 30 minutes. Webinars of this nature have become almost commonplace. However, if you'd been here 10 minutes ago while we were grappling with the technology, you might have thought otherwise, but nonetheless, we are here and we're ready to go. So it's wonderful to have so many people here. At the last count, we had about 220 acceptances, and aware that probably not everyone can make it, but fantastic to have so much interest in the topic, which is culture and its CX are two sides of the same coin. We have two special guests here with me today, who are Amanda Lee and Michael McGlynn. And before I go too much further, I'll ask them to introduce themselves, but I'll just make a couple of introductory comments first. We did a piece of research at Beaton at the end of August, September, so really when COVID was in the thick of our consciousness. And we asked a number of questions of your clients in this piece of research, one of which was, what do you find most impactful, most useful in terms of the marketing activities that firms undertake? And top of the pile, the most useful thing as regarded by your clients was communications on subjects of interest. So we are taking a taste of our medicine here at Beaton and giving you 30 minutes on a communication, which we hopefully you would regard as of interest. And the 3 in 30 webinar series is essentially all about that. We've entitled it 3 in 30 because we believe 3 ideas in 30 minutes is both achievable and good use of your time. An old boss of mine who's possibly on the call always insisted that we package things up in 3s. So this is no exception. We're packaging something up in 3 for you today. So hopefully you'll take 1, 2, or 3 useful things from today in what is a manageable period of time, i.e. half an hour. So as many of you will be aware, a lot of the work that Beaton does is founded on evidence. We work with our clients using evidence from your clients, the research that we gather from your clients. And today is about sharing some of that evidence in the context of culture and client experience. And specifically, we want to explain how those two things are close bedfellows, if you like, why they are both important to your client and therefore both important to you in your roles and your businesses. As I said, we've got Michael and Amanda along here with us today. Amanda represents ShineWing in Australia and Michael, Tonkin Taylor in New Zealand. Both organizations are what we might call serial successful at our Client Choice Awards on an annual basis. So they are well qualified to talk about the topic of culture and client experience. So without further ado, maybe Amanda first, if you'd like to give a short introduction to yourself and maybe explain a little bit about your role in terms of this business of culture and client experience, please.
Great. Well, thanks, Jon. Thanks, Beaton team, for having me along today. I'm very excited to talk about something that interests me quite greatly, which is, of course, how EX, CX and those facets impact and intersect with each other. For those of you that don't know much about ShineWing Australia, we're an Australian-owned advisory and accounting firm. We've been around for about 86 years in the market, and in 2016 joined the international network for ShineWing just to open doors through the Asian region for our clients, which has been great. So I guess my role and that of my team around culture and CX is quite unique in that we see ourselves as the voice of the client within the firm, and also we support the leaders in being the voice of the people across the firm. So there's a good segue into how I guess values sort of shape that up. So we work with a lot of different teams across people and culture, and also the IT team. I guess a lot of marketing teams did so last year through COVID, looking at different digital innovative ways to engage with clients and different platforms in which we could do that. Mm-hmm. And so I guess innovation, I think, and is also a key component of culture and values and seeing how that shapes up. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Thank you, Amanda. And Michael?
Good afternoon, and thanks as well for having us as part of this webinar. I'm Michael, and I represent Tonkin Taylor. We're an environmental and engineering consultancy, a privately owned one based in New Zealand and in Melbourne, Australia, and we work throughout the South Pacific and Asia and other parts of the globe as well. I guess from a marketing and comms perspective, our team are working on all sorts of things across the marketing and comms gambit of services, from writing bids and proposals through to channel management and managing events, and just, I guess, in general positioning of the Tonkin and Taylor brand and the different sectors in which we work in and represent. And I suppose that a big part of that is our client experience strategy. And to I guess enable that strategy, a lot of that comes down to our people, and the same will be true across most professional service firms. And so that people and the culture aspect of all of that work that I mentioned is vital. And I guess, simply put, I think for me, having engaged employees creates engaged customers, and you can't have that any other way. And I think, for something that I hold really important is in the words of Peter Drucker, who many of you will probably have heard of and may have read some of his work, and is considered, I guess, the guru of modern management. He said that sort of culture eats strategy for breakfast, and he's pointing out the importance of the human factor. And I mean, no matter how strong that customer experience strategy is, or group strategy, or sector strategy, or whatever that might be, the efficacy of that strategy will be held by how much people buy into or adopt the culture, because people implementing the plan are the ones that are going to make all the difference. And, so for me, it's not so much about having the comfy chairs and the cool workspaces, although, it's really awesome to have that stuff and it's really attractive for new employees. It's really about how your people are going to react when they're under pressure and they find themselves in challenging situations, particularly when that involves the customer. And so that's why I think that's, CX and EX go one and the same.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. And whilst we will use the word client today, we respect that some of you call them customers. And for the purposes of today, they're one and the same, although some may argue they're different, but let's not go there today. So ShineWing and Tonkin and Taylor, certainly two examples of firms that we would regard at Beaton who get this, shall we say, savvy, well-organized, well-driven organizations that get the fact that culture and CX are two sides of the same coin. But before we invite some more views from Amanda and Michael, a couple of comments. Firstly, please feel free to ask questions live, post your questions. Michael and Amanda and I will co-facilitate, and if Michael and Amanda pick up some questions that they like the look of, that will add to the conversation, they're going to do that. So feel free to post your questions at any point. But I am going to share a little bit of the aforementioned evidence before we hear some more from Amanda and Michael. So, hi everybody, it's John here, and just wanting to make a small apology that those of you who attended the webinar a few days ago will recall that we had a couple of sound problems in the middle. So for that reason, I'm just going to shoot a little bit again, just to explain a couple of slides, put in a bit more detail for the stuff that was missed out, for the benefit of everybody. So the slide you see in front of you is the basis of some research that we did at Beaton, published in early 2020. Now, culture is important, is the first point. But this session is not about 30 minutes of us espousing the benefits of a positive workplace and a positive culture. I think we all get that. Our research that we published in early 2020 asked the question, do clients care about your culture? And of the several questions we asked in that research, one of them was pertaining to the chart you see in front of you, which is essentially culture of the firm is more important than what, if you are a client. And as you can see from this chart, 37% of respondents feel culture is more important than cost. So I invite us all to consider a situation where we are submitting a proposal to a client and a competitor organization is submitting a proposal for the same piece of work to a client. Essentially, as fictitious as this example may be, all the metrics in the client's RFP have been responded to in a comparative way. We largely stack up as well as our competitor. But imagine our proposal is a little bit more expensive, and it comes from an organization in the client's eyes that is deemed to have a more positive culture. Well, our evidence on this chart would suggest that for some clients, our ability, with the backdrop, if you like, of a positive culture, is that we have a possibility of achieving that premium pricing. And certainly the research and, of course, common sense perhaps would suggest that if our proposal is coming from a place that is deemed to have a negative or maybe even toxic culture, then the chances of us commanding a premium price are certainly reduced. So if your culture is deemed as not so good by your clients, then it's feasible they won't tell you this, of course. Your clients are unlikely to say you lost on culture. They're probably more likely to say that most hated comment that we often hear, you lost on price. And of course, that's not good feedback for a business. You'd rather know why you genuinely lost, as opposed to the reason that's often given, which is you just weren't the same. You didn't stack up on price. The second chart I wanted to talk through in this little addition to our original webinar is the importance of your firm's values. We all have values. All our organizations will more than likely have stated values on our printed media, on our websites, on our social channels, whatever they may be. But again, we set out to understand, do our clients care about your firm's values? Or are they just words that exist on a website or in an annual report, for instance? And our evidence indicates two things. One, on the left-hand side of these pairs of bars, approximately half of clients are aware of your firm's values. As you can see, that in law, that's a little bit less, but certainly in accounting and built environment, approximately half. But what's more important, certainly what's more interesting from my perspective, is of the clients who are aware of your values, a substantial majority state that you or your firm acts in line with them. Therefore, the message is really clear in our view. Ensure that in all of your marketing, business development, and CRM activity, your values are communicated to your clients, because by default, there's a belief that you are acting in line with them. Of course, the obligation sits with you to indeed do that, act in line with them, but the data would suggest that if you are communicating your values, that your clients regard you as acting in line with them. So Michael and Amanda, I'm going to test you on what are your firm values and what do you do both as individuals and as a firm to ensure that your teams and your clients are benefiting from those values. So maybe Amanda, you'd like to go first.
Sure. Well, I think the values drive so much of what we do in our firm, and they were uniquely created by our people for our people. So they resonate with everyone, I guess, is what I'm getting at in terms of the importance and how important that actually is when you're engaging with clients. So our firm values, we have 5, and they are a little bit different in their phrasing. So they are own it, open doors, embrace the ride, share the load, and love your work. So and why I personally think they're so great is that they allow lots of different conversations. Whether that be in teams when you're working with clients or with each other, they foster an ability to bring to light some difficult concepts and topics that you might otherwise sort of sweep away. But I guess how they've become embedded for a reason. It's because they resonate. So you could be having a meeting with people with no clients involved, and people are still talking about our values there. How are we going to open doors? How do we need to share the load? Or someone comes up with great idea and we love your work. So how does the client benefit from that? I guess it's part of our everyday vernacular. Our learning and development program has that embedded in some of the learnings as well. And importantly, it forms a core component of our review process. So everyone needs to rock up to the review for a discussion with their manager or partner and talk about how they've actually, demonstrated all of those values throughout the year. And in keeping with that, we also have a great awards program that runs every quarter. And you can nominate a co-worker, you can give them what we call a quick high five. So a quick shout out for a job well done, and these are the values that have been demonstrated. And then we have what we call the value nominee. So that's a bit more serious, where people might have gone above and beyond, might have had a really positive impact on a client, and they're shared external to market as well. In terms of talking about proposals, before you talked about how do you demonstrate some of that? How do they look at a proposal? Well, a proposal is a static document. So how do you convey values through that? And I think that that's something that our team puts a lot of work into, to looking at how we create alignment with culture around values for the organisation that we're also proposing to work with. And I think, like what Michael said before, you want to have staff that are also engaged and delivering, and you want to also work with a client culture that suits your culture, and cultural fit is something that people talk about, but I don't think there's too many metrics around what that is and how that shapes up. So client feedback reviews on values comes through around people's behaviours, and it is around that. Importantly, we talk about leadership. Our partners have the values awards, which the board look through and are given out every year. So it's led from the top as a great example for that. But equally, I think our values allow for an authenticity of people to step up into their space and become leaders in their own way. And I think, true to Simon Sinek, everyone can be a leader. It's not your title or position in the firm. And I think that our values allow that to happen, which is a great place. I'm very proud to work there, and I really enjoy the culture for that reason.
Good, thank you. Excellent. And Michael, slightly different question to you. Please do tell us the firm's values, but I'd love to hear you pick up on that word that Amanda used a lot of, leadership and leaders, and tell us maybe what work goes on within the firm from a leadership perspective to drive culture and values.
Yeah, sure. And Amanda, I really love those values. They're really cool. I like them a lot. Ours are slightly different at Tonkin Taylor, where we've got care, collaboration, courage and creativity alongside excellence and zeal. And we've interviewed empathy interviews with over 100 client organisations as part of our CX strategy over the years. And we know that workers appointed to professional service firms, on a commercial, financial basis, but also on a non-commercial financial basis as well. And we know these are the things that people are looking for in an organisation. They're wanting firms to collaborate with, and they're wanting firms who are technically excellent and those sorts of things too. So the values in TNT are really important. We reward them in a number of ways. We recognise them, we celebrate them in lots of different channels throughout the business. Like Amanda, we have them embedded into our learning and development program, our recruitment, our job interviews, our job adverts, our graduate development program, and also everyone's goals in their learning and development program. But to touch on what you said in terms of leadership is absolutely crucial, not just for values, but also around the customer and also around the culture, because leaders really must demonstrate, and I imagine it's a lot of people on this call, really must demonstrate their commitment to values and to the customer experience and to the culture, because they really need to take responsibility for the metrics and the way that they're measured as well. It's not just a facade in a way. It's really about ensuring that we are highlighting the achievements and championing those areas of improvement. And I think the thing at TNT that works really well around that is that we've got really strong organisational alignment. And we talked about that earlier, the strategy and the culture, and having that organisational alignment with your customer experience, with your employee experience, with your values is vital.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you both, and great insights there into your organisations. Thanks for being so open. And particularly picking up on the importance of leadership, but also like the way you both have examples of how you've externalized it, how you've recognized whether this chart existed in your world or not, how you've recognized actually it is important that clients know what our values are and that we act in line with them. So wonderful insights. Thank you. So we've talked about culture, and we've talked about client experience, and let's put them two alongside one another on the same chart. I'll pick up on the phrase that Michael used earlier, which, paraphrasing maybe, happy staff equals happy clients, where we would contend that happy staff equals happy clients and happy clients equals happy staff, which all, wherever you want to put the brackets, equals profitable, sustainable, good business. And the right-hand side of this bar chart would certainly confirm that. It points to an extremely strong correlation between satisfied clients, i.e. clients who would rate their overall experience with your firm at a 9 or a 10 out of 10. The clients who are in that box are also in the box that says we have a very positive view of your culture. So to repeat the point, happy clients equals happy staff, and certainly vice versa. So picking up on this business of culture a little bit more, Michael and Amanda, we often think of culture, I think, as a bit of an iceberg. A lot of what goes on beneath the surface, we don't actually see it. But specific initiatives maybe that you've invested in as a firm, Amanda, you touched on some learning and development activity. Any specific initiatives that you've invested in that have been specifically focused on enhancing culture and or client experience?
Yeah, sure. So we recently had a division across our firm engage in a program that was designed to connect in and stay closer with our clients and understand a bit more about what their needs were more holistically rather than just the services that we were providing. So more a commercial acumen sort of focus. And, you know, we had people working in teams. We had different ways in which we engaged around activities. We included everyone who just joined the firm, the executive assistants, right up to the partners. And everyone had a chance to learn some different activities and behaviours and ways in which they could engage. And I think the important thing that came out of that was the feedback from the clients. And everyone realised that they were a listening post for how the client was tracking. And when we talk about the client's not a building, of course. It's an organisation made up of a lot of different people with a lot of different touch points. And I think that became an integral understanding about the importance of the touch points and how often you could do that and what the client wanted and what they wanted more of or less of. So I think people realise that they all play a role. It's not just the domain of the marketing team or some of the leaders in the business. Client feedback comes through in many different forms. And so how you collate that feedback and talk about that, whether it's informal or formal, it's all just as powerful. So I think anyone with a strong CX strategy understands the value of that. So how do you capture that? And I think that then gets back to looking at the tools and digital innovation and what sort of platforms you're using to do that and review that. So some of those metrics that, you know, Michael touched on and making sure that you can have those conversations are pretty critical to that.
And Michael, what more are you able to share with us? I think was the term empathy interviews you used. It'd be fascinating to give us a bit more insight into what that's all about.
I guess an empathy interview essentially is just asking supplementary questions to try and uncover emotion behind a rational response.
Right.
Whenever you talk to customers and ask them a question, first thing they're going to tell you is probably the most rational response to that question. But if you are to ask a bunch of sort of supplementary questions in addition to that, you're likely to start to dig down into the actual emotion. Mm. And we know that people make purchases based on emotion, and it doesn't matter if you're buying a pair of shoes online or you're shopping for professional services. We still base a lot of our purchasing behaviour and it's well documented and well researched on emotion, and the same holds true. And sure, we talk a lot about price, and that plays a big part, but you know, what people say and what people do are often different. And I think that's why being able to have a strong culture to underpin that experience is crucial. I mean, some of the initiatives that we've got, like Amanda and like most organisations, lots of culture initiatives that feed into the customer experience, like flexible working and the way our project management program is set up. We've got a really good culture of continuous feedback and continuous improvement. We've stitched client experience into graduate recruitment, onboarding, client manager forums, business development training, writing training, the list goes on. So, it's really, really important. And just to go back to that empathy interview work we did, that enabled us to plot a customer journey across time. And if you were to sort of root cause some of the pain points in that customer journey, you're always, as you root cause, you're always going to get down to something happening at the employee level. And it could be something like, there's some frustration at our clients' end on the way they receive invoices. Maybe it's time, maybe it's the understanding invoices. I'm just coming up with a hypothetical example.
Yeah.
There'll be something happening at the employee end that will be causing that or not enabling that to be as smooth as possible. And when you solve that at the employee end, not only do you create a better experience for your employee, but you also create a better experience for the customer.
You do. And look, before I wrap up, I'll pick up on one thing, which is very consistent with what you said there, Michael, is clients who are in this right-hand box, i.e. rate your CX at 9 or 10 out of 10, or 18 times, our research tells us, more likely to forgive your mistakes.
Yeah.
So they will be sticky clients. They will accept that you are a fallible human being where stuff happens that's sometimes out of your control. So it's if you're not sold on YCX, then there's one really good soundbite. So the final short edition I wanted to make, because of losing a bit of time, we ran out a bit of time at the back end. The final chart I wanted to share, which we didn't have time to do, is this one. The windows of your firm have no curtains, is how we've provocatively entitled this. In our research, we asked the question of respondents worked with a firm specifically because the firm had a positive culture, or you have not worked with a firm specifically because the firm had a negative culture. And as you can see from this chart, a good proportion of clients have chosen a firm specifically because they regard the firm they're working with as having had a positive culture. So I come back to the earlier point I made at the top of the webinar, which is your culture is a key part of your business development, your client relationship management, your marketing activity. If you have a positive culture, this chart alone would suggest that you have a better chance of creating longevity with your clients, of winning work, of achieving greater business with your existing and winning new clients. So we've called it Your Firm Has No Curtains because the suggestion from this chart is clients do know what's going on inside your organization. Or at a minimum, they certainly make judgments about what's going on in your organization. And they use those judgments to inform them whether or not they want to work with you or not. And again, we're not necessarily always going to have clients describe to us, you lost on culture or you won on culture. That could be something that we will never find out. But it's certainly the data would suggest to us very clearly that a positive culture is a very strong foundation from which to maintain and develop client relationships and win business. So we promised you 3 takeouts, and forgive me if we've run over slightly due to the technical hitches. But number 1, what goes on inside your business is both apparent and important to your clients. Number 2, I don't know why they're laid out differently. Forgive me, I'll start from the left. Communicate and live up to your values. Number 2, culture drives CX and CX drives culture. Therefore, we would contend invest in both. And what goes on inside your business is both apparent and important to your clients. Finally, before I wrap, if you're interested in staying with the 3 in 30 series, our next session is on March the 17th at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. It's hosted by my partner in Beaton, Paul Bonamy, and it is entitled How to Win in a Rapidly Changing World. We will be putting it right across LinkedIn, so there'll be ample opportunity for you to accept the invitation. So look, thank you everybody for your time and of course your patience for that hiccup in the middle, and special thanks to Amanda and Michael for your time and certainly sharing your insights in such an open way. We are done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.